Have you ever disliked someone instantly and you could not explain why? Have you ever judged someone harshly, only to realize later you were describing a part of yourself you had long ignored? These moments are not accidents. They are mirrors. We do not see people as they are. We see them through the lens of who we are unwilling to admit we could be. The parts of us that feel too shameful, too dark, too out of control get pushed away. But they do not disappear. They seek expression elsewhere. Carl Jung called this projection. When we deny something in ourselves, we unconsciously assign it to someone else. We do not say I am angry. We say you are aggressive. We do not say I feel unworthy. We say they are arrogant. It feels cleaner that way. Denial is not a passive act. It takes energy. It fractures our perception of reality. We begin living in a world filled with our own disowned parts, appearing in other people. The world becomes a stage where our shadow is played by everyone but us. And the tragedy is this: the more we deny, the more others become distorted. The more we suppress, the more the world reflects our wounds back to us. What we reject inside becomes the pattern we hate outside. Until we look within, nothing changes. We do not see people as they are. We see them through the lens of who we are unwilling to admit we could be. The parts of us that feel too shameful, too dark, too out of control get pushed away. But they do not disappear. They seek expression elsewhere. Carl Jung called this projection. When we deny something in ourselves, we unconsciously assign it to someone else. We do not say I am angry. We say you are aggressive. We do not say I feel unworthy. We say they are arrogant. It feels cleaner that way. Denial is not a passive act. It takes energy. It fractures our perception of reality. We begin living in a world filled with our own disowned parts, appearing in other people. The world becomes a stage where our shadow is played by everyone but us. And the tragedy is this: the more we deny, the more others become distorted. The more we suppress, the more the world reflects our wounds back to us. What we reject inside becomes the pattern we hate outside. Until we look within, nothing changes. You can silence your thoughts. You can distract your feelings. You can pretend that everything is fine. But the unconscious does not vanish. It waits. It watches. And when denied too long, it begins to speak louder through your outer life. The more you repress an emotion, the more it disguises itself. Repressed anger turns into irritation with others. Buried shame appears as constant judgment. Hidden fear becomes mistrust. What is not welcomed within becomes projected onto the world. Denial is not forgetting. It is a form of inner exile. You cast out the part of you that feels unworthy. But the cast out part does not disappear. It lives just beneath the surface, shaping how you see others, how you love, how you suffer. The unconscious always seeks integration. When you deny what is painful, it does not give up. It becomes creative. It uses dreams, slips of the tongue, emotional triggers, sudden attractions or aversions. These are not accidents. They are messages. Jung taught that what you resist within becomes fate without. You meet your unresolved wounds not in the mirror, but in your relationships. Not in solitude, but in conflict. Life brings the very people who reflect your disowned parts. Again and again. You judge someone's neediness, but deep down you fear your own vulnerability. You despise arrogance, but secretly long to feel strong. You reject the angry, but cannot admit your own resentment. In projection, you fight yourself by fighting others. Projection distorts reality. You do not see who the other truly is. You see who you are not ready to be. You cannot love clearly. You cannot trust deeply. You are not relating. You are reacting. The outer world becomes a theater for your disowned inner life. But this is not a punishment. It is an invitation. The unconscious does not attack you. It calls you home. Through discomfort, through repetition, through the frustration of seeing the same problem show up in different faces, It wants you to remember. The ego wants to feel in control. It wants to be good, right, admirable. But life is not that simple. We all carry fears, envy, selfishness, rage. And the ego does not know how to hold these without shame. So it hides them behind projection. Projection becomes a shield. When you see the flaw in another, you do not have to feel it in yourself. When you blame, you avoid responsibility. When you criticize, you create distance. The ego protects itself by pushing what is unacceptable onto someone else. This protection is not evil, it is primitive. It is a strategy born from fear. The ego believes that wholeness is too much to bear, that darkness will overwhelm you. So it fragments the psyche into good me and bad them. And that division keeps you stuck. In the short term, projection comforts the ego. It keeps its image intact, but in the long term, it isolates you. You become trapped inside your judgments. You cannot be intimate, because intimacy requires truth, and projection is built on avoidance. Jung saw the ego not as the enemy, but as incomplete. Its job is to navigate the world. But when it resists the unconscious, it becomes rigid. It defends itself against growth. It fears what it cannot control. And so, it turns people into symbols of its fear. You begin to see the world in categories, weak or strong, worthy or not, safe or dangerous. But real life resists categories. People are complex, situations are layered. Projection makes everything simpler, but it also makes you blind. The ego avoids pain by blaming, but that same avoidance prevents healing. What you deny in yourself cannot be transformed, and what you keep rejecting in others will never allow real connection. You are not protecting yourself. You are postponing your liberation. Only when the ego softens can you begin to reclaim what was disowned. You see your fear without collapsing into it. You name your anger without attacking. You admit your shame without drowning. And in that honest space, projection loses its grip. The people who trigger you are not random. They are meaningful. They bring up something in you that wants attention. Not because they harm you, but because they awaken a part of yourself that you have not yet made peace with. You feel disproportionate anger, intense resentment, deep irritation. But when you look closer, you realize the reaction is larger than the moment. The feeling has history. It carries the weight of something buried, something older than this person. Triggers are not proof of another's fault. They are indicators of your own inner tension. What angs you may reflect what you suppress. What scares you may reflect what you hide. The trigger is a flare, a call to pause and investigate. You may despise someone's arrogance, but have you faced your own hunger to be seen? You may feel offended by someone's confidence, but have you disowned your own need to take up space? Often what we judge holds what we deeply desire. Carl Jung taught that projection is most active where we are most unconscious, and the unconscious reveals itself emotionally. Your triggers are not problems, they are portals. They ask not what is wrong with them, but what is unresolved in me. The work is not to suppress the reaction, it is to track it, to slow down, to feel it without justifying it, to ask what it reminds you of, where it began, what it might be protecting. Behind every trigger is a part of you waiting to be seen. These moments feel uncomfortable, but they are powerful. Because they are moments of choice. You can react from the wound, or you can respond from awareness. You can repeat the cycle, or you can interrupt it with truth. As Jung said, what you do not make conscious will continue to direct your life. Triggers are a chance to make something conscious. They are not there to punish you. They are there to wake you, not away from others, but back to yourself. Relationships are where projection thrives. You meet someone and feel an instant attraction or aversion. But often, it is not them you are seeing. It is a part of yourself you have either lost or rejected. Relationships become mirrors, not just bonds. You fall in love and idealize. Not because the other is perfect, but because they carry something sacred you cannot find in yourself. You feel whole in their presence. But over time the image cracks, disappointment sets in. Projection has begun to fade, or the opposite happens. You feel triggered by someone's behavior. You judge them, avoid them, argue with them. But beneath the tension is familiarity. They remind you of something you have not faced, maybe a parent, maybe a younger version of yourself. We attract what is unresolved. We recreate patterns not to suffer, but to recognize. Jung believed every close relationship reveals our inner world, our unmet needs, our childhood defenses, our longings, our fears, our shadow. When we are unconscious, we demand others carry our pain. We want them to fix what they never broke, or we blame them for what lives in us. The relationship becomes a mask for avoidance, a place where we hide from truth rather than meet it. But when you become aware, relationships transform. Instead of expecting others to complete you, you meet them as whole beings. You no longer ask them to be your light, you bring your own. You stop projecting and start relating. Even conflict becomes sacred, because now you are listening. You ask, what is this showing me about myself, instead of how do I change them? You take back your power, not by controlling others, but by becoming responsible for your inner experience. In love, this changes everything. You stop chasing fantasy and begin building connection. You stop fearing flaws and start embracing humanity. You love without illusion, without demands, without projection. And that is when love becomes real. Healing begins the moment you stop pointing outward and start turning inward. As long as you blame, you give your power away. You stay trapped in the illusion that your suffering is caused by others, when in truth it begins with what lives in you. Blame creates distance. It allows you to stay safe, but it also keeps you separate. You never have to confront your part in the pattern. You never have to admit what you feel. But you also never grow. You trade truth for control, and it costs you peace. Carl Jung taught that withdrawing projection is a radical act of responsibility. It means saying, this reaction is mine. This pain is not just about them, it is about me. Not as guilt, but as ownership. You reclaim your experience instead of outsourcing it. To take back what you blame is to open the door to integration. You recognize that what enrages you often reflects your own unhealed wound. That what disgusts you may carry a trait you deny in yourself. That what you fear is what you secretly carry. This work is not soft. It is not about excusing harm. It is about meeting yourself in the reaction. Finding the place where you left your truth. Owning the emotion without projecting it. Feeling the pain without casting it onto someone else. The ego resists this. It wants to be right. It wants to win. It wants to stay innocent. But healing does not come from victory. It comes from humility. The courage to say I hurt because something in me is asking to be seen. When you take back your projection, the world becomes less threatening. People are no longer enemies. They are messengers. Relationships become places of reflection, not conflict. You stop blaming and begin understanding. And in that shift, freedom begins. The goal is not to stop reacting. The goal is to become conscious of what you are reacting to. Not the surface, but the root. And when you reach that root, you find something you once abandoned. A part of you, waiting to come home. Taking back projection is not a one-time decision. It is a daily discipline, a way of seeing, a practice of radical honesty. You begin to notice when judgment rises. And instead of turning outward, you turn inward. You ask, what is this really about? You learn to pause before reacting, to sit with discomfort, to listen to what the emotion is trying to show you. Often, what you call anger is really grief. What you call disgust is unprocessed shame. What you call fear is a longing to be free. Carl Jung taught that every projection is a message from the unconscious, a chance to retrieve what was lost. This means that every conflict can become sacred. Not because it is pleasant, but because it points you back to a part of yourself in exile. You begin to journal your triggers, not to blame, but to inquire. You ask where the feeling began, what memory it carries, what voice it echoes. You move from reaction to reflection, from automatic defense to conscious integration. Dreams become important. The unconscious speaks in symbols. The people who haunt your dreams often represent disowned parts of you. Their traits, their emotions, their actions may carry messages, not about them, about you. You begin dialogues with your shadow. You write letters to the parts of you you once disowned. You speak with the rage. You sit with the fear. You stop fighting yourself and start listening. This is the heart of inner retrieval. It is not logic. It is intimacy. Retrieval requires compassion. You cannot shame yourself into wholeness. You cannot punish your way to peace. You must meet what hurts with understanding. You must welcome what was cast out. You must love what was never loved. As you retrieve these lost parts, your projections lose power. You see people more clearly. You respond instead of react. You hold space for difference without collapsing. You stand in truth without needing control. You become rooted, not rigid. Wholeness is not the absence of darkness. It is the inclusion of it. The shadow is not the enemy. It is a doorway. And through that doorway, you find the rest of you, not perfect, not polished, but profoundly alive. At first, the shadow appears as the enemy. It feels like chaos. It carries shame, rage, envy, fear, everything the ego wants to hide. But as you begin to face it, something shifts. You realize the shadow does not seek to destroy. It seeks to be known. What you once feared becomes a source of power. The anger you buried becomes courage. The envy becomes clarity about what you desire. The shame reveals your need for gentleness. The shadow is not here to hurt you. It is here to heal you. Carl Jung taught that integration is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. Wholeness means owning both your light and your dark, your strength and your struggle, your grace and your grit, the parts you show and the parts you hide. When the shadow is denied, it controls you from the dark. But when it is seen, it becomes part of your depth. You stop leaking your pain onto others. You stop projecting your wounds onto the world. You begin living from the truth of your full self. The shadow becomes your teacher. It shows you what you abandoned. It leads you to your buried wisdom. It awakens your voice, your intuition, your boundaries, your tenderness. What once felt like a curse becomes a compass back to your soul. You begin to feel more grounded, less reactive, more honest, less afraid. You stop trying to prove who you are and start being who you are, not as an ideal, but as a full, living, evolving human being who holds contradictions with grace. This is where projection ends, not because you never judge again, but because you catch it, you work with it, you own it. And in that ownership, you find freedom. You are no longer haunted by your shadow. You are walking with it. True freedom is not found in control. It is not in becoming flawless. It is in becoming whole. When you stop dividing yourself into good and bad, worthy and unworthy, you begin to live from your center, not your image. You become real. Integration is the process of reuniting what was once split. You bring the shadow into the light. You reclaim the rejected. You listen to the unheard. It is not always beautiful, but it is honest. And in honesty, you find release. The energy you once spent hiding, defending, pretending begins to return to you. You no longer fear being exposed. Because you are not performing. You are not building a mask. You are standing inside yourself without apology. Carl Jung said that wholeness does not mean perfection. It means embracing the broken, the lost, the feared. The very things you once thought disqualified you become the foundation of your depth. Freedom is not in fixing. It is in facing. You begin to move through life differently. You respond rather than react. You speak with clarity instead of defense. You stop needing to win, to dominate, to impress. Your power comes not from force, but from presence. The world changes too. Because you are no longer trapped in projections, you see others more clearly. You allow them to be complex. You meet them without needing to control them. And that makes room for real connection to grow. This freedom is not loud, it is quiet. It does not need permission, it does not need approval. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows themselves. Someone who has walked through the dark and chosen to stay. You carry your shadow with you now. Not as a burden, but as a guide. It reminds you that you are vast. That you contain multitudes, that you are still becoming. And that nothing within you is beyond redemption. There comes a moment when you realize the enemy was never out there. The enemy was the part of you that you refused to meet. The moment you stop projecting is the moment you begin truly seeing others and yourself. You start to recognize that life is not happening against you. It is happening for your awakening. Each trigger, each wound, each reflection was a door. And each time you chose to walk through it, you stepped closer to who you really are. Carl Jung never asked us to be perfect. He asked us to be whole, to take back the parts we gave away, to sit with the parts we denied, to own our light without arrogance, to face our dark without shame. Beyond projection lies presence, the ability to meet life as it is, not as a threat to control, but as a teacher to receive. You become available to truth, available to love, available to transformation, not because you are finished, but because you are open. So ask yourself now, who triggers you most? What part of them might be living in you? What would happen if instead of blaming, you turned inward and listened, not to judge, but to understand? What truth might you be ready to reclaim? The journey back to yourself is not easy, but it is sacred. And every time you take back what you once projected, you become less divided, less defensive, more whole. You stop running, you stop hiding, and you begin living from the center of your being. Let this be your work, not to change others, but to know yourself, not to fight what you see in them, but to embrace what you lost in you. That is how projection ends, and that is how freedom begins.